later, you like sometimes you might see 5 and nothing, or you might see 5 and a sharp, or a flat, or just a flat itself. So when there's a 5 there, it still means first inversion. Just for whatever reason, there's a 5 there. The sharp then would refer to the third of the chord. Fifth, you don't do anything to. The sharp refers to the third of the chord. So this would be D, F sharp, A. Here, there's nothing but the sharp. It means the same exact thing. So G, E, G sharp, B. If you wanted that fifth to be sharp, you'd see like a line through it, or you might see a sharp next to it, or you might see a plus sign next to it, and that would mean to raise the fifth as well. Alright, so all that this is doing is the fact that there's nothing under these indicates that they're all root position, which we kind of already knew because that's the only type of chords we're dealing with. But to indicate, because it is minor, that it's almost like a reminder, raise the leading tone, raise the third tone, the third of this chord. So G, B is the third, but it's actually B flat, D, but because we have the little natural sign, it means raise the B flat to the B natural. So. Any other questions? Page 57. 1 and 2.
Does it actually say what pages?
I don't remember. You mean like in the calendar?
Yeah. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, hopefully I put the right page number down. If not, you can turn it in on Monday. This looks good.
Is it 57?
Yep, 1 and 2. What about any instances? I think we went through number 1 already on Monday. So number 2, instances of circle of fifths progression. Where did that happen? Number 2. What's that? He's doing 3. So the first measure, the E flat to the A flat, that would be 3 to 6. That's part of our chord diagram. Remember our chord diagram? We have major or minor. Start with major. 3 goes to 6. 6 goes to 2. 2 goes to 5. 5 goes to 1. And again, if you don't have that memorized, I would do that as soon as possible. It's just a circle of fifths. Start with 3, up a fourth, or down a fifth to 6, up a fourth, or down a fifth to 2, to 5 to 1. And then you have to remember that 7 functions like 5, and 4 will function like 2 as a predominant. And then our exceptions. What are some of our exceptions?
3 to 4.
3 can go to 4. 1 goes anywhere. We really call that an exception. Should probably put that first. What's another exception?
5 to 6.
5 goes back to 6 rather than going to 1. 4 has a few things, places it can go. Where else can 4 go?
2 or 1.
2 or 1, right. And then the one that the book really doesn't really talk about, but 7 can go to 5 as well. And then in minor, essentially the same thing, except for we start with scale degree 7, flat 7, the subtonic, which leads to a major 3 chord, which leads to a major 6 chord. So the qualities are different, right? But the function is still the same. They still pretty much do the same thing. And 7 is still diminished. And 4 is minor now. But all the little arrows are the same. Alright. So, in the first measure, E flat is scale degree 3 in C minor, A flat is scale degree 6 in C minor. So we have a 3 to 6 progression, which follows the circle of fifths. Now, when it's asking you to bracket the circle of fifths, it doesn't mean to bracket every chord progression that follows this chord diagram. It's only asking you to, about the chords that follow the circle of fifths, that are a fourth or a fifth away, a fourth up or a fifth down. So it's all these, the way I write it is the bottom chords. I forget if the book has these on bottom or top, and it's the bracket ones. But, so 3 to 6. Now the first, well, the next chord progression is A flat to F. That's 6 to 4. 6 does go to 4. Is that a circle of fifths progression? No, because it's a third away, right? So that wouldn't count. Then we got 4 to 5. 4 to 5 follows the, conforms to the chord diagram, but is not a circle of fourths progression, or fifths progression. What about 5 to 1? Yeah, right? That's our last one right here, 5 to 1. So yes, you would bracket those two chords. What about 1 to 4?
It's circle, it is.
Yeah, according to our full circle, even though it's not part of our diagram, our full circle it would be. So yeah, I would definitely, that one was a little bit trickier to find. But our full circle, we got 1 to 4, to 7, to 3, to 6, to 5, to 1. This is our entire circle. This is really the same thing as what I did here, just in a circle instead. 1 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 1. Again, yes. So sometimes we'll only see it like this, where it's only two chords. Other times you'll see it's a little bit more of a series. Again, one of the more common type of series that you see of chords from the circle of fifths progression is the 2, 5, 1. And again, if you study jazz at all, or if you even are thinking about studying jazz and you go onto YouTube, that's probably one of the first things that, and if they're gonna talk about jazz theory, more than likely you'll hear about 2, 5, 1s relatively quickly into the discussion. So that's exactly, it's a circle of fifths progression. Just a small little snippet of it. All right, does that explain at least that part of the assignment? Because there is something similar to this on the quiz, so I just want to make sure everybody understands what they need to do for that part of the quiz. All right, one more time, I'll go over the quiz. And answer any questions that you might have. All right, so yeah, section 1, or section A. It's not that one, keyword here. print one up?
Yeah.
Okay. This is just like our assignment that was for Monday, just find a chord that follows the chord that's listed according to our chord diagram. The want to point out, it's in minor. So make sure the chords you write down reflect minor key and not major key. So you get mark down for that. Section B, our good old finding the errors, finding and labeling the errors. It's pretty self-explanatory, we've done that enough times, I think everybody understands that. Section C, just like the homework, okay? Figure out what key you're in, figure out the chord progression, bracket any circle of fifths progression, just like we did, and then put in those inner voices, alto and tenor. Make sure the stems are going the right way, right? And then section D, just a small little example of three-part texture. You have to just fill in the alto and the soprano. Again, make sure your stems are going in the right direction. If you have an incomplete chord, what chord tone can be omitted? The fifth, right. So you can have two roots and a third, or you can have a complete chord, root, third, fifth. All right, questions about anything on that quiz? Again, you bring it in on Monday, hard copy. If you want to email it to me before Monday, that's perfectly fine. Either way it works. All right. Let's back up a page on the homework, or from the workbook rather. Page 56. Probably on the back of your homework assignment if you turned it in from Monday. If you don't have it, it's fine, let's look at this. So the directions say, should have to go to the first page to do this. Label all chords in Roman numerals and base position symbols, bracket any succession of Roman numerals that do not agree with the major minor chord diagram. Oh yeah, section C, a lot of us forgot the lead sheet symbols. I didn't mark you down or anything, but those of you that did that, I appreciate it. That's helpful. For this one, non-chord tones in the solo part have not been put in parentheses, but the harmonic analysis can be done by concentrating on the accompaniment, so just the keyboard part. The key is G minor, despite what appears to be an incorrect key signature. So they're telling you right now, the key is G minor. The reason for it, it says key signatures had not become standardized when this work was composed. So composers before the Baroque era, and even during the early part of the Baroque era, still didn't have like specific key signatures for specific keys. So this looks like it could be an F major or D minor, but it's actually in G minor, according to like this composer wrote it. And sometimes even with jazz band music or lead sheet symbols, I see the wrong key signature for the tune. Like if it's something that has a lot of dominant 7 chords, which has a flat 7 in the chord, they'll write it in the key of that dominant 7 chord rather than the key that it's actually in. It gets confusing, and for me it's more annoying than anything else. Not really confusing, it's just annoying. I'm not sure why the person doing it did it that way, but anyway. So key is G minor. First chord. We're only looking at this. Now notice the bassoon part is in tenor clef, up above. We can analyze that later, but let's take a look at the first chord in the keyboard part. Pretty straightforward. What are the notes? Joey, what notes do you see? minor, that would be what, Roman numeral?
1 or 5.
5. And we have the raise F sharp, F to F sharp, which is the third of the chord, which makes it a major 5 chord, so capital Roman numeral D. What about the next chord? Andrew, what notes do you see?
E flat, B, and G.
E flat, B flat, is the key signature, and G. So what's the root of the chord? Is it the E flat?
It's the E flat.
Yeah. Okay, good. So it's E flat, G, B flat is how you would stack that up. And so what scale degree is E flat? In G minor?
6.
6. So we have a 5 to 6 progression, deceptive progression. Notice top voices are all moving down stepwise in the bass. Now that middle voice, it's because it's a keyboard part, gets a little lost. You could say that it's moving up to the G, doubling the G. It's not really going to be there either way. Some of the chords have 2 voices up top rather than 3, because it's a keyboard, and we can get away with that. Moving to the next chord, Seth, what notes do you see in this measure?
So we have the E flat, C, G,
What's the root?
C.
C. So you have the C, E flat, G chord. What scale degree is C in G minor?
It's the 4.
All right, so we have a minor 4, but it's in first inversion. So minor 4, 6, right? So 5. G minor, got our 5 chord, to our 6, to our 4. So far, 5, 6, 4, following our chord progression. And then got D, D, F sharp, A, just like our first measure, so that's a 5 chord. Does that follow our chord diagram? 4 to 5. Oh. Yeah, right? Even though it's in first inversion, it still does. All right. G, D, G, B flat. That's our 1 chord. G, B flat, D. Then we have C, E flat, G, C. Just like the one that the measure that Seth mentioned. At least the first part of that measure, looks like we changed chords on the second part. So that first chord though is a 4 chord, this time in first or in root position. Then we have B flat, D, G, D. Mila, what chord is that? B flat, D, G, D.
You say,
B. B
oh,
flat.
B flat.
Yep.
I wanna say it's a G, but the third is.
So if it's a G chord, G, B flat, B. That looks like a triad to me. Yeah. So what scale degree is that?
The 1.
Yeah, that's just our 1. But the B flat's in the bass, so what do I have to write after it?
Go 6.
6, good, first inversion. Then we have G, D, G, B flat. G, B flat, D, looks like another 1 chord. This time in root position. Then we have D and a low D, D, F sharp A. D, F sharp A, again, we've seen that chord before, that's a 5 chord. And then back to the 1 chord, G, B flat. So it looks like all the chords follow this, conform to our chord diagram. Do we want to spend the time? No. Well, yeah, let's just look at a couple measures here. So the first measure, I know it's in tenor clef. Well, what notes do we see in that first measure in the bassoon part? What's that first note?
F sharp.
F sharp. Alright. Yeah, F sharp, and then it jumps up an octave to F sharp again, F sharp. What note is this?
C.
That's C. And then the note below it,
B.
B flat. And the note below that, A. Okay. So this first measure has these melody notes. The chord is our 5 chord, which is D, F sharp, and A. Alright, so what notes in this melody do not belong to the chord?
C and B flat.
The C and the B flat, right? The F sharp and the A are chord tones. So the way we would mark that, if we were analyzing this, you'd circle the 9 chord tones individually, and then we would mark what type of non-chord tones they are. And we haven't gone into that explanation yet. We won't go into that for a few weeks. But I just want you to start to how to understand what notes are chord tones, which ones are not chord tones, all right? So in this next one, we got E flat and G. What notes do we have in our melody? This is our 6th chord, E flat, G, B flat. What's the first note?
G.
G, good. And then that one jumps up an octave to G. Now we have what note? Top line, E flat, good. And then that repeats, still got E flat because the accent on it stays. And then under E flat, the next note down is D. So what's the non-chord tone in this measure? Yeah, the D. So we would just circle that D, and then we would put a label next to it when we figure out what the labels mean. So here we have a C, E flat, G chord for the whole measure. C, E flat, C, C. And what's this note? The last note? G. Any non-chord tones? C, E flat, C, C, G. All chord tones, right? Nothing to label there. Then we have F sharp in the next measure. The chord is D, F sharp, A. F sharp goes down to D, F sharp, C, no, A. F sharp, D, F sharp, A, C, A. What would be the non-chord tone in that measure? The C. Again, we circle the C and label it that way. All right? Again, just kind of throwing this out there. We're going to talk about this much more in the future, but just wanted to kind of get your heads around what it is that we're going to be looking for when we start talking about non-chord tones. All right, so, but for now, let's get back to chord tones and what to do with them. So, all right. in this chapter, final thing we gotta do is talk about harmonizing a melody. So now we're to the point where we should be able to come up with our own melody and now our own progression to that melody. So we're not gonna be confined anymore to the book's chord progressions. We'll be able to create our own chord progression, using this. So I thought I would leave this up here as a point of reference, but because I need this space, I'm gonna have to erase it. So if you need to have this out, maybe get your book out, or hopefully a lot of you have it memorized at this point anyway. But you might need it as a reference. All right. Let's create a melody together. So, let's make it easy on ourselves. Let's go C major. All right. It's gonna be kind of hard to do, like, without, you know. I guess maybe what I'll do, I'll get us started. So I want to say, what chord should be our first chord?
Let's start on the one.
We're gonna start on the one. Alright, so that's always something to keep in mind. What notes then should be our melody notes if we're in the key of C major and we're starting on the one chord? C, E, G. So really those are our only three options. And let's do, just, won't go too far with this, maybe 2-bar melody for right now. What should be our last chord?
1.
1. What beat should the last chord be on?
What's our time signature? Common?
Let's say 4/4. Good question.
1 or 3.
1 or 3. But since this is a 2-bar example, let's give us an extra room, so we'll make it on 3. What chord? All I'm doing is writing the up here. This is just to remind me of the rhythm that I need to have for this. All right. What chord generally leads to 1?
5.
So that's a good chord to maybe keep in mind going to 1. All right. So now from there, options are wide open. If we're gonna start with the melody note first, you can start with the chord progression first. There's no harm in doing that either. But for this style of music, again, the focus sort of on the melody, melody in the soprano and the counterpoint of that melody with the bass. I'd say the melody is at least a good place to try, but I've started a lot of the compositions that I've written. Some of them I start with a melody and then I add the chords. Sometimes I start with a chord progression and I dwell on that chord progression for a while, and I come up with different ideas until I'm satisfied with the melody that I feel like I finally get. So there's no right or wrong way here, and sometimes it's just whatever way is inspiring to you in the moment. So I'm gonna start my melody note just for the sake of getting things started on an E. And then we say we want mostly stepwise motion. With an occasional leap in there. Since I'm going down, I won't be able to leap down, but maybe I can leap up. Let's have a leap up to a G. We'll see if that, if we can do that. And then F. And I know this chord has to be a G, B, D chord, and this chord has to be a C, E, G chord. So I could go back up to G, but then I'd have to try to find a different focal point. So since I have G here as my focal point, Alright, so I don't know what chords are here, but I'm just, right now I'm figuring out a melody. Now this melody I might have to change, depending on what I can do with the chord progression. So, with that being said, D being my melody note for the second chord, what options do I have to harmonize that D? So the way I think about this is D, can D be the root of the chord? Alright, if D were the root of the chord, what chord option do I have? 2. If D were the third of the chord, what would be the option then?
6,
Close.
7.
7. And if D were the fifth of the chord? 5. Everybody see how we're doing that? Okay. The way I would think about it, if it's the root, then I want to imagine notes stacked above it. If it's the third, I'm going to imagine one note stacked below it and another one above it. And if it's the fifth, I'm going to do 2 notes below it. That's the way I look at it as far as what notes can harmonize the melody. So for this next one, we have a C in the melody. If it's the root, what's the chord? C, G, which is our 1 chord. All right, if it's the third, what's our root? A, which is what scale degree? 6. And if it's the fifth, our root would be F, which is 4. And then we have a G. If G is the root, it'd be the 5. If G is the third, what's the root? E, which is 3. And then if G is the fifth, what's the root? C, which is back to our 1. Alright, so just with this measure alone, we have a few options now. And you kind of want to think of it like a puzzle, or maybe even like a roadmap. Alright, if I have a 2 chord, or I'm sorry, 1 chord going to a 2 chord, can 1 go to 2? Yes, 1 can go anywhere. So 1 could go to any of these chords. But if they go to 2, can 2 go to 1? No. Can 2 go to 6?
No.
Can 2 go to 4?
No.
That kind of limits me on, I don't think I can use this 2 chord at all. Alright, what about the 7? What's Mr. Gord say about the 7 chords?
To a 1.
Well, it goes to the 1, but do we use them right now?
Oh,
Diminished chords?
no.
No, we're gonna stay away from diminished chords altogether. Now, when next chapter we get into first inversion, we can start using 7 chords again. But right now, we're not gonna use them. Yes, it can function like a 5, so 5, it could potentially be a replacement for a 5 chord, and we could go over directly to 1, which, so this could be an option later. Right now, not an option. So our only option right now, looks like is our 5 chord. So, can 5 go to 1?
Yes.
Can 5 go to 6? Yes.
Yes.
That's
Yes,
the back
yes,
arrow.
yep.
Can 5 go to 4? Some of the examples we've seen, Bach can do it, but no, we can't do it yet. So, no, we're not gonna go to 4. If we go to 1, can 1 go to 5? Yes, 1 can go to 3, 1 can go to 1, so that 1 is safe. If we go to 6, can 6 go to 5? Yes and no. Does anybody remember why? Not according to our chord diagram. If you're shaking your head, no, it can't go. You're correct, okay? But there's a little side note to that rule. Is it here? Right here, on page 105. We talked about this the other day, and I said, I knew I had to find it, it's right here. Remember that, wait, no, alright, likewise, when 6 substitute temporarily for 1 in a deceptive progression, it might be followed by any chord. So, in this case, the 6 could turn into the 1 and could potentially be followed by any chord as well, because, or 6 is, it's a 5 to 6 progression, so 6 is acting like a 1 chord, temporarily taking on the responsibilities of the 1 chord, so then we could go back to 5, we could go to 3, we could go to 1. I'd say probably the most common thing for it to do is to go back to 5. Just from experience and looking at a lot of different music, it usually goes back to 5. Probably not to 3 or, why not 3 or 1? Just, what's the, when we were looking at some of these chords and their functions, like the 5 chord is a dominant function, right? The 7 chord functions like the 5 chord, so 7 chord is a dominant function. The 4 chord is a subdominant, or we call predominant function. The 2 chord has that predominant function. What kind of function is the 6 chord? Does anybody remember? Does it function more like a dominant or a predominant? Does it function more like a 1 chord?
2 common tones with 1 chord.
More common tones with a 1 chord. So it actually kind of has the same sort of function as a 1 chord. So if you have a 1 chord, like 6, sort of like a 1 chord, followed by another 1 chord, there, we're not really shifting anything. Not say it's bad, but I don't know, maybe we listen to it. That's really what it comes down to. What's your ear tell you? So our melody, and we have first chord, second chord. Now if we go to the 6, we go back to the 1. Good work. Here's 1, 5, 6, back to the 5. 3 might be tricky getting back to 1. Maybe we could do it. 3s aren't used as often, but I don't know. Kind of sounds good to my ear, using a 3. Right now we have a lot of options, so I might even just leave that open for a second and see what options I have for the next chord. So we have F here. If F were the root, it would be an F major chord, which is 4. If F is the 3rd, what's the Roman numeral? 2. If F is the 5th, what's the Roman numeral?
7.
7. All right. And we know we can't use that chord. So if we chose the 5 to go after 6, 5 won't usually go to 4. Can 5 go to 2? According to our diagram?
No.
No. So actually 5's not an option. So my thinking of 5, 6, 5 wasn't even gonna work anyway. If we go 6 to 3, can 3 go to 4?
Yes.
Yeah, that's an option. 4 then can go to 5, and then 1. That might not be bad. We'll have to play that out and see how that sounds. 3 3 can go to 2? Yes, no?
No,
No, so 2 wouldn't be an option there. If we went from 6 to 1, 1 of course go to 4, 1 of course go to 2, and then 2 could go to 5, so we could have that as another option. So now again, you just play it and decide what sounds good to your ears. So I go, we're gonna go 1, 5, 6, 3, 4, 5, because that's one that I'm kinda curious about. 6, 3, 4, 5. That's kind of a pretty progression. If we don't, let's see, if we go 1, 5, we can even, I mean, real simple, you go 1, 5, 1, 1, 4, 5, 1. That would be a very simple progression, but it would be fine. 5. Not as colorful as the previous one, but it works, it's fine. We go 1, 5, 1, 1, or 1, 5, 6, 1, 2, 5, 1. Let's try that one. 1, 6, 1. That one also worked. I would be happy with that one too. So, you know, it's just kind of like figuring out your roadmap. We're gonna go here, and then do we go here, do we go here, and so on. Now, some of it will also be determined on our bass line. Does our bass line double the soprano? And if that's the case, does it double it when it goes to the next chord? If that's the case, then we have parallel motion and we can't go to that chord, so we have to figure that out too. So let's look at our bass line now. We have 1, 5. That's kind of nice counterpoint. We got the bass leaping up, the soprano going down, opposite direction. That works. If the bass went up a step to the A, then we'd be going opposite direction of the soprano again. So that 6 might be a really nice choice. From A, then if we did go to E or C, we'd be leaping in the opposite direction of the soprano again, creating really nice counterpoint. We'll try that E, see if that works. And then E goes up to F, soprano's going down. F can go up to G, soprano's going down. And then we'd have to go down to C, even though soprano's going down. Does that create a problem? So then now I'm looking, is that a direct fifth? Is that a direct octave? We do end up on octaves. And they're moving in the same direction. Is this a direct octave? Why not?
There's not a leap in the soprano.
Not a leap in the soprano. There's a leap in the bass, but not in the soprano. So this is still okay. So actually, this is really nice counterpoint to the bass. Like the soprano, every time the soprano is moving down, the bass is moving up in the opposite direction. So kudos to this progression. That could work. Now, filling in the inner voices is the big trick, because maybe our methods are going to work out great here, but I have a feeling with this big leap in the soprano, we might have to change a method to get to that, but we'll see. We'll see how this works out. All right, so our first chord, we have C and E. We need a G and another C. I want to spread them out to start off, just so I have some space between the voices. So I'm going to try to make this as spread out as possible. I got C, G, E, and then I want another C here. I think my other option would be, my only other option really, is to give the alto the G, or I'm sorry, the C, and then I'd have to have the tenor way up on a G to start. That's a little high, plus everything's close position, I'd rather have them, like I said, more spread out. If I put the C, maybe I would like, oh, that's too high for my alto, I want the C down here, now I have a spacing error. So I really, the only option would be to give the alto the G and the tenor a C. Alright. So bass moving up a fifth, we have the soprano moving down. What method are we gonna use here? Can we use common tone method?
Yeah, repeat that G for the alto.
Repeat the G for the alto, we'll try it. Here we got G, and then we have G, G, D, we need a B. Tenor moves down by step. Common tone method works, good. All right, we have a 5 to 6 progression, deceptive progression. Bass is moving up by step, top 3 voices move opposite the bass. Let's see if we can just do that. We have the D and the soprano moving down to C. G moves down to E. And the B will move down to the A. All right, now we're going to our E chord. This is where I'm curious to see what happens here. And we have a big leap in the soprano, so we can't do, well, what's the method? Typically, when you have a fourth part, you'd have 3 methods, right? Common tone, tertian, and similar motion. But I don't think our soprano is following any of those rules. So, oh, it is, it could be. We'll see. I don't know if we can make this one work. We have the soprano, the third of the A chord, leaping to the third of the E chord. So that would indicate to me tertian method. So if that's the case, common tone stays, and our other chord tone, other voice moves by step. The problem with this is that the soprano leapt up rather than leaping down. And we have a spacing error now because of that. So we can't use tertian method. Is common tone method isn't gonna work either. Common tone would be that, same note. Similar motion probably won't work because it's leaping up over a chord tone. So we have to see, is there any other way to do this? We might have to just go rogue and not follow the methods at all and see if we can make it happen. All right, so we have an E and a G. We need a B and we need another E to complete this chord. So my thinking is that, let's see, the E could leap up to B. And then we need another E. So A would have to go up to E. Okay. Now though, we have to just double check, because we didn't follow the method. Did we break any rules here? We have an A and an A, and we're going to an E and an E. What is that? Not this. We have unisons to octaves, yeah. Contrary motion, but yeah, still parallel contrary fifths, or sorry, octaves. Also, A to E in the bass and the alto, E to B in the bass and the alto, that's actually contrary fifths as well. at this point, I'm not seeing any other option, I really like the sound of that chord. Now, again, next chapter, we might be able to fix that, cause we can use first inversion triads, and we might be able to get around that a little bit. But right now, since everything, we're locked into root position, at this point, I either change my soprano note, or, remember we had another option, we had a one chord. I don't know if a one chord will work here or not. With this melody, well, we can try it. If we go to one instead, I think we still might be in the same kind of predicament. Yeah, we got, well, alright, so instead of E, we got A, oops, what am I thinking? C. C, C, E, and G. Alright, so we already have the G taken care of, we have a C taken care of, we need another C and another E. Or a C and an E. Can't leave the alto where they're at because we create a spacing error, so we're gonna have to have the alto leap up, I guess maybe to the C. That's the only way I can see it staying. Could leap up to a G, but then we're doubling the G, so I kinda see it only, it could jump up an octave, I guess. It's a big leap for the alto. Then the A would have to go to C. If it went to, then the tenor would have to be leaping up to a really high C, that's ridiculous. So yeah, I think the C. We need E. What's that? If it went to middle C?
Oh, yeah, if you put the.
Tenor on middle C?
Mhm.
Yeah, now, the problem is that the alto has to be on an E. So
Right.
if it's on this E, we got a spacing problem. If it's on this E, we have a spacing problem that way. So I think we have to give the alto the C. And we can give the tenor an E. This is tricky, well, A to C is a 6, right? So usually you'd have two common tones. But it is possible to not follow that when you, and get away with not having any parallel motion. So I'm interested to see if we have that happen. Tenor and bass. We have A's, alright, but then they move in opposite direction to different notes. So that's not contrary octaves anymore. C and E is a third apart. So bass and alto are a fifth apart. They move in contrary motion to octaves. Alright, so far so good. Bass and soprano we know are good, because we checked that earlier. Tenor and alto are at fifths apart, but now they're at a sixth apart, E to C. So they moved in the same direction, but they didn't move parallel motion. Tenor and soprano are a third apart, and they are a third apart again. So parallel thirds, that's okay. Alto and soprano are a sixth apart, alto and soprano are a fifth apart. I think we made it work. But they got a little sketchy because we weren't following the suggested method that the book says. But when we do have, I feel like if you are gonna go rogue and not follow the method because you really wanna like keep your soprano part where it's at, your melody where it's at, it's fine, try it. I think if the roots are a fourth or a fifth apart, it's a little bit harder to go outside of the methods. If the roots are a third or a sixth, you might be able to do it. You just have to try it out and see. But the methods generally speaking are the best way to go. But I think we got it. So what did we do here? We went from 1 to 5 to 6 actually, I'll keep that one up there, I'll just cross it out. So. One to 5 to 6, and then instead of going to 3, because 3 didn't work, but we like the sound of it, maybe something to bank later and try it on another. We could go to 2 or to 4 now, we have that option. We'll keep 4 for the time being. 1 to 4 is what type of progression, what's the interval there? A fourth, so we can use we can try common tone, we can try tertiary method, we can try similar motion. We have an F and an F, we need an A and a C. If we kept the common tone C, we need an A in the tenor. The tenor's on an E. In order to get to an A, it has to jump. E is the third of this chord, A is the third of the next chord, that would be the tertiary leap method. Will we be leaping up or leaping down? Why up? Why not down? Anybody? Up is right. What happens if you leap down?
We got spacing here.
Yeah. Too much distance between our tenor and our alto. So we have our tenor leaping up to an A. A, C, E, which is getting pretty high for our tenor. Yeah. So maybe let's not use tertiary method. Can we use similar motion method? Let's try it. If G goes down to F, C would go down to what? What's our nearest? F, A, C is our chord. C would go down to the A, right? E would go down then to our remaining note. We have F, F, A, C. All right, we have top voices all moving in the same similar direction to the nearest chord tone that's less than a third or less. So we did it right. If any of these jumped more than a third, we went in the wrong direction, and we would have to figure something else out. But that seems to be working. All right, we have the bass moving up by step. Top voices all move down, right? So we have the F down to D. A would move down to nearest chord tone, which is G. C would move down to nearest chord tone, which is B. And now we have G to C, which is up down a fifth. Again, we could try common tone. The G would stay where it's at. What note am I missing from my chord? I got C, C, and a G. I need an E. So it wouldn't be common tone, it would be tertiary leap. The tenor would have to leap up to the E, which it could. If I didn't want the tenor to leap up, I want to keep a little more conjunct or closer together, we'd have again, we'd try similar motion. So G would move down to E, and B would move down to G, and we complete the chord down. So now we have a chorale on a melody we just wrote. Ooh, big stretch. That works. Yeah. So the final product, we ended up going to our 4, and then our 5, and then our 1. So that was. So now I would probably go through and erase the ones I didn't use, and try to clean it up maybe a little bit so that it looks a little nicer to present to my teacher. Yeah. essentially, starting on page 108 in the textbook, this is what they have you do. Same thing we just did. We can go through their example here as well. So they start off again with a melody. You know, at this point, we're gonna start with our 1 chord. We're gonna end with our 1 chord. You have your 5 chord to your 1 chord. Notice they break it up, and you can do this. If you have half notes in your melody, don't feel confined to only doing 1 chord for that half note. You can have different chords for every beat. So the 2 chord can work with the E, and the 5 chord can work with the E. You have some options there. Let's just see from what we would do with this melody versus what the book ends up doing. We'll follow their progression. At least we'll look at to the end. All right. We have an E here. If E were the root of the chord, what chord would we have? 2. If E were the 3rd of the chord. 7. C would be the root. If E were the 5th of the chord. 5. A would be the root. Alright. D's the root of the chord. That was straightforward. If D were the 3rd of the chord, we have a B6. And if D were the 5th, 4. G would be the root, right? 4. If G's the root, that would be our 4. If G is the 3rd, 2. E would be the root, so 2. And if G were the 5th, C sharp would be the root, so 7. E is the root, that's your 2. If E is the 3rd, C sharp, 7. And if E is the 5th, A would be the root, that's your 5. F sharp, F sharp's the root, it's your 3. F sharp's your 3rd, it's your 1. If F sharp's your 5th, B, which is 6. Yes. Alright. A, that's your root, that's a 5. If A is the 3rd, F sharp's the root, 3. And if A is the 5th, D, which is your 1. F sharp, we already did. Sometimes you can always look back a little bit, if you repeated a note, which happens. D, we already did. 1, 6, 4. And then the last measure's already done for us. All right. Right off the bat, you're Now we have some options. If we go to 2, can 2 go to 1? Ordinary chord diagram. No, 2 doesn't go to 1. Can 2 go to 6?
No.
No, 6 goes to 2, 2 doesn't go to 6. What about 4? No, I don't think 2 is an option at all here, at least right now. Again, might become an option later when we figure other things out, but right now it's not an option. So 1's gonna have to go to 5. All right, 5 can go to 1. Can 5 go to 6? Can 5 go to 4?
No.
No. All right. So we can keep our options open. Probably what I'll do, as I'm trying to figure this out, I wanna see what the baseline also is gonna look like. So if I have a 1 chord going to a 5, do I want it to go up? Do I want it to go down? I might want it to go down, just stay away from my tenor. So I create a little more room. If I went up, all the voices would be really close together at that point, so I'm gonna spread things out. And then I could go, if I went back to 1, it would look like this. If I went up to 6, it'd be moving up by step as the soprano moved up. Either way, pretty good counterpoint with the soprano. I mean, every once in a while, they're gonna have to move in the same direction. You can't get past that, and you strive for them moving in the opposite direction, but it's gonna happen from time to time, and that's all right. Moving to our next chord, if I do go to a 1 chord, 1 can go anywhere, so it can go to the 4 or the 6. If I went to the 6, technically, because it's preceded by the 5, I could go to either one of these as an option as well. So we can keep them both there for now. If I go to 4, can 4 go to 2? Yeah. 4 can go to 5 as well. 2 could stay on a 2. That is a possibility. You just have a half note there. 2 could also go to 5. If we went to 2 though, can 2 go to 3? Can 2 go to 1? Can 2 go to 6? So that limits, takes that choice out of it right away. So we're gonna have to go to 5. Again, 5 can go to 1. Can 5 go to 3? No. We could go to 6 though too, as well. You know, 5 can go to 6. Do we want 2 deceptive progressions right in a row? I probably wouldn't do it. I think like 1 is kind of like, you know, again, deceptive, you're fooling your listener, but you don't want to be like a jerk about it. I don't know. Or maybe it works. I don't know. You gotta, again, you gotta listen to the sound. Here's our here's our melody. With our 2 deceptive progressions, that would sound like this. That's our first one, and then if we went to the 4 chord. Another deceptive progression. We do say 1. Sound better than another way? Again, it's subjective. It's not like both, any of us, those ways could work. Thoughts, Matt? You?
I like the second one.
Would
165 251.
1,
or 156.
5, 6, and then 2, and ending on the 1. It sounds a little more complete when you end on the 1 as opposed to ending on the 6. But we're not finished yet, so having the 6 there could be an option. Could depend on, I guess, again, I guess where we go after that, but 1 or 6 can go anywhere after that.
And as I think about it, we're gonna end on 251 as well, so maybe not 251.
Maybe that would be redundant, yeah. Well, let's keep our options open then until we continue, or like get closer to the end. So 1 can go anywhere, 6 can go anywhere because it's preceded by a 5 chord. If we go to a 3, it could be an option. Well, let's start with 5, I guess. If we go to 5, 5 couldn't go to 3, 5 could go to 1, 5 could go to 6 again, another deceptive progression. If we went to 3, 3 could stay on 3, 3 wouldn't be able to go to 1, 3 could go to 6. Or we go to 1, we stay on 1, and then we can have another option there. So I guess in a way, all of them could work. At that point, then I might look at my baseline, and that might help me determine, because remember, we don't want any parallel motion either. So if I had, say we went to the 1 here, I mean, eventually we have to make a decision again, whether we feel confident with that or not. If we went 1 to 5, if I went up with my 5, is there any problem with doing that against my soprano part? So we have the bass and the soprano moving in the same direction, resulting interval is an octave, and the soprano is leaping into that, so that would be direct octaves. So, quick change for that, have the bass go down. Now they're moving in opposite direction, that could work. If I have the soprano going to the 3, it's in parallel motion with the, or I'm sorry, the bass moving up to 3, parallel motion with the soprano, but it's parallel thirds. I guess that could work. It stayed on the 1, nothing changes. I have 6 in there instead. 6 is B. 6 back to 5 could work with our bass. 6 to 3. That could work as well. And 6 to 1. 6 to 1 would not work. B to F is a perfect fit. D to A is a perfect fit. So we'd have parallel fifths if we went 6 to 1. So we'd have to keep that in mind as we're going through this. I guess at some, like I said, at some point you just kind of have to make a decision and go with it. And just for time's sake, let's just make a decision here. So let's go back. Let's go with our, with Matt's thinking, I kind of agreed with them when I heard it as well, is that do the 1, 5, 6. So we have our deceptive progression there, and then maybe a 2, 5, or maybe just to switch it up since we do have a 2, 5 there, maybe we can do a 4, 5 instead. 6, and then 4, 5, and 1. Alright. I do want to look for any parallel motion or anything that's going to cause trouble. Oh, right off the bat. Do we have an option? No. We have a direct fit. Right off the bat. I didn't even notice it before. D down to A, F sharp down to E in the soprano. They move into a perfect fifth. Wait, no, the soprano's not leading, sorry, the soprano is moving by step. That one out, good. That's it, alright, stepwise in the bass, stepwise down in the soprano, looking good. Thirds apart, octaves apart, fifth apart, third apart. So no parallel motion with our bass and our soprano. So alright, so we got good movement going on so far. Keep that one out. 4, 5, 1. Alright. Moving forward, new phrase. Probably, well, I don't know. I guess any of these could do it. I might play it. Let's try 3. Only because I've said stay away from 3s, but like let's say like 3's a more interesting color or chord than a 1. Let's just see if that would even work. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. We did 3 F sharp. If I went with 3 there, I could stay on a 3, but that's 3 beats of a 3 chord. I might want to stay away from that. 3 can't go to 1, 3 can't go to 6, so, right? So let's try 6. 6 is B. And then 6, again, I could stay on 6, or I could go to 4. Maybe 4 would be more colorful, something different. And then we go to 2, 5, 1. All right. If I have, now I have to just double check my bass line. We have a third here, D up to a third, so that's fine. Going to our next chord. Any reason why this would be bad? From an F sharp to an A, which is a third, to a B to an F sharp, which is a fifth.
Similar motion with a leap in the soprano into a fifth.
Which is our direct. Our direct fifth. Yeah. So we do end up with a direct fifth there. I could try avoiding it by moving the bass up instead. So if I really want to keep it, then we just changed it, so we're good. We're awfully close though with our inner voices. That might be a problem. We'll see. So B to F sharp still a fifth. G to D is what? Interval. Also a fifth. D. G to D, also a fifth. So it's parallel fifths. So even if we moved it back down, we would have that direct fifth, but it wouldn't even change it because we'd have contrary to perfect fifth. So 3 won't work. Bummer. I was hoping it would. 5 to 1 to 4 could work, maybe. Let's try that. 5 to 1 to 4. So we have our 5, D and F sharp, A and A is octaves. We're moving in contrary motion. If I move that A up, then we'd have direct octaves, but we don't because I moved that A down. D to F sharp is a third. G to D is a fifth. So far, so good. E to E are octaves. E and A, oblique motion. And then D to D, octaves. So I guess this bass line could work, this chord progression. Let's see, 5 to 1 to 4 to 5. Let's do it. With our bass alone. chords. I'm just doing, when I do the chords, I just do block chords. I jump around, not worried about parallel motion at this point. Just want to hear the harmony. Do it a little better. Sounds fine. Yeah, Matt?
Don't we have a fifth problem there on the last beat of the third measure?
Do we?
Do you have a lead to the soprano contrary into a fifth? On my
Which, last note of the third measure?
third measure, yeah.
This one, we do have a fifth.
Yeah, and so you've got a lead in the soprano contrary
Where's-
to the bass.
Yeah, but it would have to be in the same direction as the bass moving contrary motion. So that's all right.
Okay.
D to F sharp is a third, G to B is D, G to D is a fifth, but they're moving in contrary motion. If the soprano is moving, if the bass is moving in the same motion as same way as the soprano, then we would have the right fifth.
So a minute ago when we were talking about this, that was similar motion. When we had.
Yes,
Oh,
yep,
all right.
similar motion.
Okay.
All right, I think we got a nice chord. We would have to then go through the steps of adding the alto and the tenor. Let's see what the book did. I'm pretty sure they have a different chord progression. Again, similar to how we did it, they took out all the diminished seven chord. So that won't because right away we're not including those because we're going to avoid root position diminished triads. Next step, to compose the rest of the bass line. So, as I said, the challenge here is to try to create a good harmonic progression while avoiding creating parallel or direct fifths and octaves with the melody. So just like we did, once you kind of get an idea of a bass line, check it with the soprano. You know, because you might have a good chord progression, but if the bass and the soprano are moving in parallel motion, then that's not going to work. After you are satisfied with both, the final step is to add the tuner voices like we were just talking about. So they harmonize, let's see, they did the same thing for the first two bars. And very similar for the third bar, except for they stayed on the one chord for 3 beats. And we decided to have a 5 chord start off that second half of the phrase. Ours isn't wrong. Theirs isn't necessarily, you know, any more right than ours, unless we go through this and we find that we can't make the tenor and the alto work with that our progression. But I would think we can. I don't think that that's an issue. Yeah. So that will always back it up. Definitely be, or that's one way to do it. The other way, if you don't have a melody to start with, like I said, just figure out chord progression and then go with the melody after it. If you want to start with the melody first, you can always do that. Our examples, homework that you'll have to do, this will be on page 59. You're given a melody, and then you're supposed to come up with a chord progression that works with that. The melodies are not very interesting. They did not like go crazy with this melody. I would ask you, if you guys write melodies, I would ask you to do something a little bit more than that. But these are the melodies that we're stuck with, at least for now. Let's have you do 1 and 2. So 1 is going to be SATB 4 voices in the key of G major, and 2 SAB, soprano, alto bass, 3 voices, and it could be in D major or B minor. B minor is gonna be trickier, but if you're up for a challenge, you got some extra time this weekend, then give it a try. Remember with minor, what do we have to do with the 5 chord?
Raise 7.
Yeah, raise scale degree 7 or the third of the 5 chord, right? So you wanna keep that in mind. In fact, what note would that be if we were in B minor?
F sharp, B minor,
The 7th,
the 7th.
7th note of B.
No, A.
A, there it is, A sharp, so we have to make, we have to add A sharps to our 5 chords, in this. Alright, questions?
What are the keys that we're doing for 59?
Was that for 59? Well, the first, they're given to you, right there on the page. Number 1 is G major, the second one is D major or B minor.
Okay.
And we do have the quiz to complete by Monday as well, so we do have some work. I don't know. Shouldn't be too bad.
That was the quiz that we got on Monday, right?
On Monday.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions I can leave out? These are not collecting any homework they might have. Page 57, if you want to do, sign on this.
We're gonna do it.
All right, well, have a good rest of your week.